On my daughter's 21st birthday, my mom replaced her party with my sister's baby shower. Apparently, my mother believed my daughter's 21st birthday was just a scheduling suggestion, because when I walked into that party, I was expecting a late cake, maybe a dead speaker, possibly one of those folding tables that wobbles if you breathe near it. What I was not expecting was a baby shower for my sister in my daughter's rented party room on my daughter's birthday. Yeah, let that marinate for a second, because even now, when I tell the story, my brain still goes, nope, that can't be right. Surely you are remembering this wrong. I am not. I walked through those doors and immediately got hit with pastel everywhere. Pastel balloons, pastel ribbons, pastel tablecloths, little fake flowers, tiny baby socks hanging from strings, like somebody had robbed a nursery and exploded it inside the event hall. There was a giant sign across the back wall. Welcome, little one. Cute, adorable, perfectly appropriate for literally any occasion except the one I had paid for. I stood there holding a bag of last-minute decorations and stared. My daughter stood beside me, and she went completely still. That was the part that got me. Not the balloons, not the sign, not even my mother's smug little face across the room. My daughter, she had spent the entire afternoon getting ready. She'd curled her hair, she'd done her makeup, she'd bought this black dress she kept insisting was too much, even though she looked absolutely incredible in it. She'd asked me before we left, Mom, seriously, does this look okay? I told her yes, 3 times. She smiled. And now she was standing in a room full of people celebrating somebody else's life. Nobody was saying happy birthday. Nobody was even looking at her. My sister was in the middle of the room with one hand resting on her pregnant stomach, smiling while relatives crowded around her. Someone was asking when the baby was due. Someone else was talking about names. My aunt was holding up a tiny pair of yellow booties and making that high-pitched baby voice. Grown adults somehow develop the second they see something smaller than a loaf of bread. And my mother was glowing. She had that look. Like she had just personally solved poverty. She spotted me and waved. You're here. I stared at her, then at the sign, then at my daughter, then back at her. Mom, she smiled wider. Good, we were waiting for you. I swear for about 5 full seconds, my brain just stopped. Not slowed down, stopped. There was nothing up there, just static, a tumbleweed, maybe a tiny loading symbol. Because what do you even say? Hi, Mom, weird question. Why is there a baby shower where my daughter's birthday party is supposed to be? I finally managed. What is this? And yes, I know. Brilliant question. Absolutely Pulitzer-worthy. My mother looked offended. The shower. The what? The shower. She gestured around like I was blind. I looked around again. Oh, right. The shower. The shower happening in the room I had booked for my daughter's 21st birthday, because apparently the calendar had become a democracy and nobody told me. I looked at my sister. She wouldn't meet my eyes. That hurt. Actually, no. That pissed me off. My mother had known. My sister had known. Somebody had known. And meanwhile, my daughter was standing next to me holding a little gift bag we'd made together the night before. It had a giant glitter 21 stuck on the front. The glitter was already peeling. We had argued over it for 20 minutes. She wanted gold. I wanted silver. She won, obviously, because she was 21 and I was trying to pretend I knew how to be cool. Now that stupid little bag was hanging from her hand while 30 people celebrated a baby who wasn't even born yet. My mother stepped closer. You need to calm down. Oh, there it was. The family emergency siren. Whenever my mother said calm down, it meant she had done something outrageous and was now hoping my reaction would distract everyone from the crime scene. I looked at her. You changed the party, she sighed. I changed the room. You changed everything. It made more sense. More sense for who? She gave me that tight little smile. For the family? I laughed. I actually laughed. Not because anything was funny. Because sometimes your body just picks an inappropriate response when your soul is too exhausted to scream. For the family? Your daughter is young. She'll have plenty of birthdays. My stomach dropped. My daughter looked at the floor. There it was. That sentence. The one that would live in my head forever. She'll have plenty of birthdays. As if birthdays were coupons. As if 21 was some meaningless Tuesday. As if my daughter had not spent the last few years growing into herself while my mother kept finding ways to make every family gathering about my sister. My mother continued. The baby is coming. This is important. So is her birthday. Don't be dramatic. There it was again. Dramatic. Difficult. Sensitive. Ungrateful. Apparently, I had won the family bingo card before dinner. My daughter touched my arm. Mom, I turned. Her eyes were shiny. She smiled. That awful little smile. It's fine. No, it wasn't. I knew that smile. She had learned it from me. That was the part I hated most. She had learned how to swallow hurt and call it fine because she'd watched me do it her whole life. I wanted to tear every balloon down. I wanted to grab the giant welcome little one sign and feed it to the trash. I wanted to ask my mother exactly what kind of grandmother sees her granddaughter dressed up for her 21st birthday and thinks, you know what this room needs? More baby booties. Instead, I took my daughter's hand. Come with me. My mother stepped in front of us. Where? I looked at her. Somewhere her birthday still exists. Her face changed. Not much. Just enough. The smile disappeared. Do not start something. I almost laughed again. Do not start something. My favorite sentence from people who started something. I walked around her. She grabbed my wrist. Hard. Do not embarrass me. I looked down at her hand, then back at her. You already embarrassed yourself. Her eyes narrowed. My daughter whispered my name. I squeezed her hand. Come on. We left. And here's the ridiculous part. Nobody stopped us. Not one person. The room was too busy congratulating my sister. That was when I understood how completely my mother had planned this. This wasn't some accident. This wasn't a misunderstanding. She had taken the room. She had decorated it. She had invited everyone. She had replaced my daughter's birthday with my sister's baby shower and expected us to quietly accept it. Fine. If she wanted a show, she could have one. Just not the one she planned. I stepped into the hallway and pulled out my phone. My hands were shaking. I scrolled through my contacts. I found an old number. My former boss. I hadn't talked to him in years. Calling him felt insane. So naturally, I called. He answered. I didn't even say hello properly. I need a room. Silence. Then, is this an emergency? Yes. Another pause. Are you okay? No. I looked at my daughter. She was wiping tears from under her eyes. I need somewhere to put a birthday party. He started asking questions. I started rambling. The hall. My mother. The shower. My daughter. 21. The decorations. The stupid balloons. The stupid sign. Everything came out at once. I probably sounded completely unhinged. Honestly, fair. He listened. Then I heard typing. There is a smaller room in the back. How small? Training room small. Does it have chairs? Yes. Tables? Yes. Can I put cake in there? He laughed. Yes. Then I want it. It's not decorated. I don't care. It's pretty plain. I don't care. The lighting is terrible. I have spent my entire life under terrible lighting. Give me the room. He laughed again. And somehow that tiny laugh kept me from falling apart. He said he'd have staff set up some tables and tablecloths. I told him to charge whatever he needed. He hesitated. Are you sure? No. I looked at my daughter. But do it anyway. 20 minutes later, we walked into the back room. It was ugly. God, it was ugly. The walls were beige. The chairs looked like they had been designed specifically to punish office workers. There was a coffee smell in the air that had probably been trapped there since 2009. But there was a cake, a small round cake, white frosting. Happy birthday written across the top. The letters leaned slightly to the left. It was perfect. My daughter stopped in the doorway. She covered her mouth. Then she cried. Not the quiet tears from before, real crying. Shoulders shaking, face scrunched up. She turned toward me. You did this? I nodded. Of course. She walked over and hugged me, hard. And I held her. I held my 21-year-old daughter in that ugly little room and cried into her hair because suddenly, I didn't care about the party anymore. I cared about her knowing one thing. She mattered. Even when my mother tried to erase her, especially then. I started calling people. My cousin, 2 of my daughter's friends, a coworker. Anyone who actually remembered why we were there. Some came, some didn't. Some gave me that uncomfortable look people give when they know there is family, drama, and desperately want to pretend they are above it. Whatever. The people who came were enough. We sang. We ate cake. My daughter laughed. Actually laughed. And for about 40 minutes, I thought we'd escaped. Then the door opened. My mother walked in. Of course she did, because apparently peace was not on her itinerary. She stood there staring at the tiny room, the cake, the mismatched plates, my daughter smiling. Then she crossed her arms. So this is what we're doing. I stared at her. My mother looked around, dividing the family. I felt something inside me crack, not explode, not shatter. Crack, like something old finally breaking under pressure. I stood up. My daughter went quiet. Everyone else went quiet too. My mother lifted her chin. You've humiliated me. I looked at her. No. My voice shook. But I kept going. You humiliated my daughter. She opened her mouth. I didn't let her. You took her birthday party. You replaced it with my sister's shower. You invited everyone here and acted like she didn't exist. My mother shook her head. This isn't the place. No, actually this is exactly the place. My hands were trembling. My voice was too. I didn't care. You keep doing this. You keep making everything about her. And every time I say something, you call me dramatic, difficult, ungrateful. Her face hardened. You are disrespecting me. No. I looked at my daughter, then back at my mother. I'm finally respecting her. Silence. My mother stared at me like I had slapped her. Then she said the sentence she always used when she realized she was losing control. We'll talk about this later. I nodded. Okay. She blinked. I smiled. Just don't expect me to listen. She stormed out. The room stayed silent for several seconds. Then my daughter whispered, Mom. I looked at her. She smiled through her tears. Thank you. And that was it. That was the moment I knew something had changed. Not with my mother. She wasn't changing. The next morning, my phone exploded. Family group chat, private messages, missed calls. My mother had already rewritten the story, obviously. In her version, I had ruined my sister's shower. I had caused drama. I had divided the family. I had humiliated her. Nobody mentioned the birthday. Nobody mentioned the room. Nobody mentioned the way my daughter had stood there invisible, in a dress she had bought for herself. They just talked about my behavior. My aunt sent me a message. You need to apologize for the sake of the family. I stared at it, then laughed, because apparently peace meant my daughter had to disappear quietly. I didn't answer. Then my mother posted a picture, her and my sister, pastel balloons behind them, big smiles. Caption about family, about love, about sacrifice, about how heartbreaking it was when people let bitterness destroy something beautiful. I stared at the screen. My daughter sat beside me. She read it. Then she looked at me. She's never going to admit it. I swallowed. No. My daughter nodded. Then I don't want to talk to her. I looked at her. Okay. And I meant it. I thought that was the end of it. I really did. I thought we'd survive the birthday disaster. Deal with the gossip. Move on, and maybe someday my mother would get bored. Because apparently I had learned absolutely nothing about her. She didn't get bored, she escalated. First came the phone call to my job, then my daughter's university, then the strange account statements, then the credit card opened in my name, then the mail being forwarded to my mother's house. And suddenly the birthday party wasn't just the worst thing she'd ever done. It was the first domino, and I had no idea yet how many were standing behind it. The thing about people who lose control of you is they get real creative with the definition of an emergency. Suddenly everything is an emergency. Your birthday? Not important. Their feelings? Emergency. Your job? Emergency. Their reputation? Code red. sirens, national broadcast. And apparently my mother had decided that if she couldn't control me inside the family, she was going to start reaching into every other part of my life. Because the morning after the birthday disaster, my phone would not shut up. Buzz, 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 buzz. I woke up at 6:30 with my cheek stuck to my pillow and approximately 0 hours of emotional stability remaining. There were 37 notifications. 37. Who has that much time before breakfast? My mother, apparently. I opened the family group chat. Mistake. Huge mistake. Like opening the fridge at midnight hoping someone magically bought groceries. Same disappointment. My mother had already written a whole essay about how devastated she was. Not about my daughter, about herself. Obviously, she described the birthday party like I'd stormed into a sacred ceremony wearing combat boots and thrown cake at pregnant women. In her version, she had generously offered to help create a beautiful celebration for my sister. There had been confusion. There had been hurt. There had been an unfortunate reaction. That was her favorite phrase, an unfortunate reaction. As if I had slipped on a banana peel and accidentally yelled at everybody. Then came the guilt. Family needs grace. Family needs forgiveness. Family should not be divided. The baby deserves peace. I read the whole thing while sitting on the edge of my bed in yesterday's clothes. By paragraph 4, I was grinding my teeth. By paragraph 7, I was considering throwing my phone into the toilet. By paragraph 10, I was laughing. Not because it was funny. Because what else was I supposed to do? Cry into my coffee? I had already done that twice this week. My daughter came downstairs. She took one look at my face. She knew. She didn't even ask. She just grabbed her coffee and sat across from me. I showed her the screen. She read it. Then she pushed the phone away. That was all. And somehow that hurt more than if she'd yelled. Because she was tired. Not dramatic, not angry, just tired. 21 years old and already tired of having to explain why being ignored hurts. I wanted to fix that. I wanted to go backward. I wanted to become the mother I should have been 10 years earlier. Unfortunately, time travel remains unavailable, which feels like a personal attack. So I did what I could. I stopped replying for one day. Then my mother called my workplace. That was when the whole thing went from ugly family drama to, oh, so we're doing crimes now? My manager asked me into her office around 10 in the morning. She had that careful expression people get when they are about to say something that could either be completely normal or completely insane. She closed the door. My stomach dropped. She told me my mother had called. I actually laughed. A little. Not because I was amused. Because my brain couldn't process it. My mother had apparently presented herself as a concerned parent. She was worried about me. She thought I was emotionally unstable after a family conflict. She wondered whether I was capable of handling work. She had apparently been very distressed. Of course she had. My mother could win an Oscar for distress if distress came with applause. I sat there listening while my manager explained that she did not know why my mother had her number, did not appreciate being dragged into family issues, and mainly wanted to make sure I was okay. I told her I was fine. I was not fine. But I was functional. There is a difference. I was going to work. I was paying bills. I was showing up. I was taking care of my daughter. I was just also fantasizing about moving to a country where nobody knew my last name. Totally normal. My manager believed me. She also told me if my mother contacted the office again, I should let her know immediately. I walked back to my desk feeling like somebody had reached into my life and touched something that did not belong to them. My hands were cold. My jaw hurt. And then my phone buzzed. My daughter, she had been contacted by someone at her university. Apparently my mother had called them too. I swear to God, my mother was collecting institutions like Pokemon. Workplace? Got it. University? Gotta catch them all. My daughter had been pulled aside by an advisor who was concerned about family stress. She had to explain that she wasn't in danger, that she wasn't being abused, that she wasn't having some kind of breakdown. She had to sit there and talk about our private family disaster with a stranger because my mother had decided to weaponize concern. My daughter came home that afternoon looking humiliated. That was the part that made me furious. Not embarrassed, humiliated. She threw her backpack on the floor and sat at the kitchen table. I watched her stare at nothing, and I knew this was no longer just about me. My mother had found the easiest way to hurt me. She was going after my daughter. That night, I changed every password I had. Banking, email, insurance, streaming accounts, everything. I changed security questions. I added two-factor authentication. I wrote down recovery codes. I started making a list, not because I was paranoid, because I had finally accepted something I'd spent years avoiding. My mother did not respect boundaries. She considered boundaries challenges. Then came the credit card. The first statement arrived on a Tuesday. I opened it while eating toast. I saw a balance. Then I saw purchases. Then I saw my name. I blinked. I read it again. No. Nope. Absolutely not. I called the company. The card had been opened recently, using my information, my social security number, my birth date, everything, and the mailing address, my mother's house. I stopped breathing for a second. Not metaphorically, actually stopped. The customer service representative kept talking, while my brain sprinted around, the room screaming. I asked when the account had been opened. She told me. I asked when the address had been changed. She told me. I wrote everything down. Then I called another company. Same problem. Another account. Another address. Another weird little financial breadcrumb leading straight back toward my mother. Could I prove she did it? No, of course not. Because apparently criminals are considerate. Enough to avoid leaving convenient evidence. There was no video of her sitting at a computer wearing a villain cape. No confession. No signed document saying, "Hello, I am ruining my daughter's credit today." Just timing, information, access, and a pattern. I felt sick. My daughter sat across from me that night while I spread paperwork across the kitchen table. She stared at everything. Then she said something that made my stomach turn. She realized my mother wasn't just trying to make people dislike me. She was building a story. A story where I was unstable, irresponsible, financially reckless, difficult at work, a bad mother, a bad daughter, a problem. And if enough people believed it, then anything my mother did afterward could be dismissed as necessary, protective, reasonable. I leaned back in my chair. I felt cold all over. That was the moment I stopped thinking this was going to blow over. It wasn't. This woman was building a case against me without ever saying she was building one. And honestly, that was terrifying. My sister came over a few days later. No warning. She looked awful. Hair pulled up, no makeup, eyes swollen. She sat at my kitchen table and kept staring at her hands. I knew before she said anything. Something had cracked. She finally admitted my mother knew about the birthday reservation. Not vaguely, not accidentally. She knew. She had seen the booking. She knew it was for my daughter's 21st birthday. She knew the date. She knew the room. She knew everything. And she had decided the shower was more important. My sister admitted she had known enough to understand what was happening. She had just chosen not to look too closely. That one hurt, because people always act like cruelty only counts when somebody commits it with their own two hands. Sometimes cruelty is just standing nearby and deciding the victim isn't worth the inconvenience. My sister had spent years being the favorite. She liked it. She admitted that. And honestly, I respected the honesty even while wanting to throw a chair. Being the golden child is addictive. You get praised, protected, defended. You get the better gifts, the softer rules, the benefit of every doubt. Why would you voluntarily step out of that? You wouldn't, not until the warmth starts burning you. She told me she'd finally realized something. My mother was already talking about how she would raise the baby, how she would be involved, how she would help, how she knew what was best. And suddenly my sister was terrified because she could see the future. The baby would grow up, the baby would have opinions, the baby would eventually disappoint my mother. And then the same machine would start again. Different child, same script. I listened. I wanted to tell my sister that I forgave her. I wanted to tell her I understood. I wanted to scream at her. I did all three internally because apparently I contain multitudes and none of them are particularly well adjusted. I didn't tell her she was forgiven. Not yet. Forgiveness was not the priority. Truth was. And she had finally told me some. Before she left, she warned me that my mother would probably deny everything. She was right. Of course she was. 2 days later, my mother sent another family message. She called my accusations dangerous. She said I was attacking my sister during pregnancy. She said she was worried about my mental health. That phrase again, mental health. Nothing makes people look more respectable than pretending your victim needs a therapist. I sat there staring at the screen. Then I snapped. Not dramatically, not loudly, just completely. I opened the group chat and I wrote everything. The birthday, the reservation, the decorations, the back room, the calls to my workplace, my daughter's university, the financial accounts, the mail, every single thing. I wasn't elegant. I wasn't strategic. I wasn't calm. I was pissed. There were typos. There were too many commas. At one point, I used the phrase pastel hostage situation. I still stand by it. I hit send. Then I threw my phone onto the couch like it had personally betrayed me. Silence. For maybe 30 seconds. Then chaos. People started responding, not with concern, with outrage, not about what had happened, about the fact that I had said it publicly. Apparently, family secrets have rules. You can hurt people privately. You can humiliate them quietly. You can lie about them publicly. But the second the truth gets typed into a group chat, suddenly everybody becomes a constitutional scholar. My mother sent a voice message, crying. Of course. I listened to 30 seconds before shutting it off. I didn't need the rest. I knew the soundtrack. Sacrifice, pain, motherhood, betrayal. She had suffered. She had done her best. She loved everyone. She was heartbroken. Not one denial. Not one specific answer. Just tears. My sister jumped in next. And that one broke something in me because she denied everything. She said I had misunderstood her. She said she never told me my mother knew. She said she never meant to suggest any of it. She threw herself straight back into the golden child position. I stared at the screen. My daughter was beside me. She read it too. Neither of us spoke. There was nothing to say. The betrayal was almost cleaner than the birthday disaster. At least now I knew. My sister wasn't ready. Maybe she never would be. And I couldn't save somebody who kept choosing the cage because the cage came with benefits. That night, my father called. My father, the man who had spent years hovering around our family like a ghost who occasionally remembered he had children. He said he'd seen the messages. He said things had gone too far. Then he gave me the missing piece. My mother had resented me from the beginning. Not because I had done something wrong, because I had arrived at the wrong time in her life. She had been young, overwhelmed, unprepared. She'd wanted another life. Then my sister came along later when everything looked easier, stable, manageable. My sister became the symbol of the life my mother wished she'd had, and I became the reminder of everything she believed she had lost. I sat there listening, and I hated how much it explained, not excused. Explained. There is a difference. My father also admitted something else. My high school graduation, the one where half the family hadn't shown up. I'd spent years believing everyone had simply been busy. Turns out my mother had created a crisis around my sister that morning. Nothing life-threatening, nothing urgent, just enough chaos to pull everybody's attention away from me. I remembered that day. I remembered scanning the seats, looking for familiar faces, pretending I didn't care. I had smiled for photographs, then cried in the bathroom. And now, years later, I found out my mother had engineered the emptiness. That knowledge landed differently. Some wounds don't reopen, they deepen. My father told me I should forgive her, because she was still my mother, because she was getting older, because life was short, because family mattered. I almost laughed. Family mattered. Apparently that phrase meant the same person gets to hurt you forever. I told him I was done. Done chasing approval. Done explaining. Done apologizing for reacting to things other people did. Done. And for the first time in my life, I meant it. The next few months became paperwork. Not glamorous. Not dramatic. Paperwork. Banks. Fraud reports. Credit freezes. Passwords. Security alerts. Legal consultations. Documentation. Dates. Screenshots. Names. Every phone call. Every email. Every suspicious account. I built a folder on my laptop labeled records. Then I made a backup. Then another. Because apparently adulthood is just paying taxes and becoming your own private investigator. The lawyer told me proving who opened the accounts would be difficult. She told me suspicion wasn't evidence. She told me I could repair most of the financial damage, but proving intent would be another story. I hated hearing that. I wanted justice. I wanted a courtroom. I wanted my mother sitting under fluorescent lights while someone read every single thing she'd done out loud. I wanted witnesses. I wanted consequences. Instead, I got forms. So I filled them out, because protecting myself was more important than getting revenge. That distinction took me years to understand. Around the same time, my daughter started talking about leaving, not just the neighborhood, the city, maybe the state. She wanted somewhere my mother didn't know everyone, somewhere nobody had already decided who she was. We started looking quietly. No announcements, no social media, no family, just us. Two women at a kitchen table with laptops open, calculating rent and gas costs and job salaries like we were planning a heist. Honestly, it kind of felt like one. My daughter applied to schools farther away. I looked at transfers through my company. We started saving, selling things, cutting expenses, building an exit. My sister visited once more before we left. She brought the baby. He was tiny, ridiculously tiny. The kind of tiny that makes you nervous about holding them wrong. I held him, and something in me softened, not toward my mother, toward the future. I looked at that little face and thought about everything my family had passed down like some cursed heirloom: favoritism, silence, guilt, fear, manipulation. And I thought, no, not for him, not for my daughter, not anymore. My sister cried. She admitted she still wasn't ready to leave my mother. She depended on her: money, childcare, housing, approval. All of it. I understood. I hated that I understood, but I wasn't going to drag her out. People have to choose their own exit. You can hold the door open. You cannot carry someone through it while they are still holding onto the furniture. So we left. We packed a rented truck. We sold half our stuff. We drove for hours toward a city where nobody knew us. The apartment was smaller. The job paid less. The plumbing made a noise at night that sounded like a dying animal. The walls were thin. The neighborhood wasn't glamorous, but nobody knew my mother. Nobody had her version of me preloaded, and that felt like oxygen. For the first time in my adult life, I woke up without wondering what my mother had said about me while I slept. My daughter started school. I started the new job. We ate cheap dinners. We argued over laundry. We laughed about stupid stuff. We had boring Saturdays. And I swear to God, boring felt luxurious. Then one afternoon, my daughter came home pale. She handed me her phone. Someone had created a fake social media account using her name, her picture, old family photos, posts about abandoning grandparents, posts about selfish daughters, posts that made it look like my daughter was attacking our family. I stared at the screen. My first thought was simple. Oh, you've got to be kidding me. My second thought was much worse, because whoever was doing this knew exactly where to hit. My daughter started withdrawing. She stopped posting, stopped taking pictures, stopped going out. She worried people at school would believe it. She worried my mother would keep finding new ways to reach her. One night she sat on her bed and whispered that maybe she really was a bad granddaughter. That nearly destroyed me, because this wasn't just about escaping my mother anymore. It was about getting my daughter out of the psychological wreckage she'd left behind. We found a therapist, both of us. At first I hated it. I hated sitting in a room explaining my childhood. I hated realizing how many of my personality traits were actually survival habits. The sarcasm, the over-explaining, the constant apologizing, the way I laughed when I was furious, the way I tried to predict everyone's mood before they entered a room, the way I could walk into a kitchen and immediately know who was angry by the sound of a cabinet closing. Cute, totally healthy, definitely not exhausting. My daughter started talking too. She admitted she had spent years watching me shrink. She admitted she sometimes blamed me for not standing up sooner. That hurt badly, but she was right. I had taught her without meaning to that keeping peace mattered more than keeping yourself. Now we were both learning something else. Peace isn't peace if you're the only one paying for it. Months passed, then a year. The fake account eventually disappeared. My daughter's grades improved. She made friends. I settled into my job. We built a life that wasn't impressive on paper. It was just ours. One evening, we celebrated her first big academic achievement with takeout and a tiny cake. One candle. She laughed when I said my wish was for boring days. She told me I was weird. I told her I had earned the right. Then my phone buzzed. A cousin had sent me a screenshot. My mother had posted an old picture from the birthday disaster. She had edited the story into nostalgia. Family together? Beautiful memories. My sister smiling. The baby coming. My mother glowing. And me? Gone. Cropped out. Like I had never been there. I stared at that picture for a long time. The old version of me would have been destroyed. Would have called someone. Explained. Defended. begged to be understood. This version of me just looked at it. Then I locked my phone. My daughter looked at me. I shrugged. She can keep the story. And for once, I meant that too. Because I finally understood something. My mother could rewrite the past all she wanted. She could crop me out. She could change the captions. She could tell every relative I was cruel. She could build an entire fake universe where she was the saint and I was the villain. But she couldn't change what happened. She couldn't change what my daughter remembered. And she couldn't control what came next. That part belonged to us. And then, a few weeks later, my father called. My mother was sick. Seriously sick. The kind of sick that makes everybody suddenly remember the word family. He told me she wanted to see me. He told me people thought I should come home. He told me I might regret it if I didn't. I stood in my kitchen with a dish towel in my hand. My daughter was watching me, and somewhere deep inside me, that old reflex woke up. The little girl, the difficult daughter, the one who always went back, the one who always apologized, the one who believed maybe this time would be different. She was still in there, but she wasn't driving anymore. I looked at my daughter, then at the phone, and I knew exactly what I was going to say. For the first time in my life, I was going to disappoint my mother on purpose, and that somehow felt like freedom. I said no. That was it. No dramatic speech, no crying, no 20-minute explanation about childhood trauma while standing barefoot in my kitchen with a dish, towel over my shoulder. Just no. My father called again the next day. I let it ring. Again that evening. Ignored it. Then came the texts. Then the relatives. Then the people who apparently had been waiting in the bushes for their chance to tell me what a daughter was supposed to do. I didn't answer any of them. And weirdly, that was the first peaceful week I'd had in years. Until my sister called. Not my mother, my sister. She was crying. And this time it wasn't about the baby. It was about a box. Apparently, after my mother got sick, my sister had been cleaning out a closet at her house and found an old plastic storage bin shoved behind winter coats. Inside were photographs, letters, school papers, birthday cards, little pieces of my childhood I'd forgotten existed. My sister had found them because my mother was getting rid of things. And this is where my stomach dropped. Because among all those old papers were things I had written as a kid, drawings, report cards, a stupid little poem I'd written in 4th grade, pictures from school plays, a photograph from my first dance recital. My mother had kept them, which sounds sweet until you know the rest. She had also kept every card where I'd apologized to her, every note where I'd begged her not to be mad, every childish letter where I'd promised to be better, like trophies, like proof, like evidence that even as a kid, I had already learned the trick of making myself smaller to keep her happy. My sister sent me pictures of the box. I stared at them for a long time. I expected rage. Instead, I felt weirdly numb. Then I noticed something else. Buried underneath everything was a sealed envelope. My name was written on it, my handwriting, but I didn't remember it. My sister mailed it to me. I waited 3 days before opening it because apparently emotional stability now means letting mail sit on your kitchen counter while you mentally prepare to ruin your own afternoon. Inside was a letter I'd written when I was 17. I had completely forgotten it. It was addressed to myself, not my mother, not my father, me, future me. And it was painfully embarrassing in the way only teenage writing can be. I complained about school, about boys, about money, about wanting to leave home. Then near the end, I wrote that one day I wanted a house where nobody yelled, a house where nobody made you feel guilty for eating the last cookie, a house where people could say they were hurt without getting punished for it. I sat at my kitchen table reading that stupid letter with tears running down my face. Not because it was profound. It wasn't. It was 17-year-old me being dramatic and weird, but she had known. She had known exactly what she wanted. She just didn't know how to get there yet. I folded the letter and put it in a drawer. Then I went back to work. Because unfortunately, emotional revelations do not pay rent. 2 weeks later, my mother came home from treatment. She survived. Of course she did. She was tougher than everyone expected, according to the family posts. There were pictures, flowers, cards, people bringing food, my mother sitting in a chair looking tired but victorious. The comments were basically a digital standing ovation. I didn't look at most of them. I had learned that scrolling through my mother's page was like picking a scab because you miss the pain. Then my cousin sent me something, a screenshot. My mother had posted a picture from years ago. It was my daughter's first birthday. I was standing beside the cake. My daughter was in my arms. My mother had cropped me out, again, except this time something was different. Someone had commented asking why I wasn't in the picture. My mother had responded. She said I had been difficult that day. That was it. 3 words. Difficult that day. I stared at them. Then I laughed. I actually laughed, because suddenly the whole thing was so ridiculous. My entire life reduced to 3 words under a filtered photograph. Difficult that day. Like I was a weather event. Like everyone needed umbrellas because I had feelings. I saved the screenshot. Not to post. Not to expose her. Just because I wanted proof for myself. A record. A little digital fossil from the family museum of nonsense. Then something happened that I wasn't expecting. My sister posted something. She posted a picture of her son. No family drama, no inspirational quote, no vague message. Just him sitting on the floor playing with a toy truck. And underneath it, she wrote that she wanted him to grow up knowing every side of his family, including the people she had spent years avoiding. That post stayed up for about 4 hours. Then it disappeared. My mother had gotten involved. I knew because my sister sent me another message. She said she couldn't keep doing this. And for once, she didn't ask me to fix anything. She didn't ask me to forgive anybody. She didn't ask me to come home. She just said she was tired. I understood. Maybe too much. Because I knew exactly what tired meant. Not sleepy. Not physically exhausted. The kind of tired where your nervous system is basically standing outside your body holding a tiny cardboard sign that says, please stop. My sister eventually moved out. Not immediately. It took months. There were fights, money problems, childcare problems, a lot of crying, a lot of second guessing. She had to learn how to make decisions without checking whether my mother approved. That sounds simple. It isn't. When someone controls your choices for years, freedom can feel like making a mistake. She got an apartment. It was tiny. The kitchen barely fit 2 people. The baby's crib took up half the bedroom, but it was hers. She sent me a picture of the keys in her hand. I stared at it and smiled. That was probably the closest thing we had to a family victory. Not forgiveness, not reconciliation, just another person finally getting out. My daughter finished school a few years later. She graduated on a warm afternoon with one of those cheap folding chairs digging into the back of my legs. I didn't care. I would have sat on a brick. There were no giant family banners, no dramatic speeches, no relatives pretending they had supported her all along. Just me, her friends, a couple of professors, her life. She walked across that stage and I started crying before her name was even called, which was embarrassing. I tried to hide it, failed miserably. She saw me, she laughed, and for once nobody told me to stop making a scene. Afterward, we went to a little restaurant near campus. Nothing fancy. Burgers, fries, a slice of cheesecake we split because apparently graduation makes you hungry enough to eat furniture. We took pictures, real ones. Nobody cropped anybody out. My mother didn't see them. I didn't send them. That mattered more than I expected. For years, every good thing I did came with this weird urge to prove it, to show her, to make her see. Look what I did. Look what your difficult daughter became. Look how happy we are. Look what you missed. I finally stopped. That was probably the strangest part. Not the move, not therapy, not blocking numbers, not even the financial mess. I stopped needing an audience. A few months after graduation, my daughter moved into her own place. I helped carry boxes up 3 flights of stairs while sweating through a shirt I really liked. She had a tiny couch, 2 lamps, a mattress on the floor, a coffee maker. That was basically it. She was thrilled. I stood in the doorway looking around. Her place, her rules, her life, and I realized I had spent so long trying to protect her from becoming me that I hadn't noticed something important. She wasn't me. She was herself, and she was going to be okay. My mother still posted. Oh, she posted family pictures, birthday tributes, cryptic quotes, old photographs. Sometimes I appeared in them. Sometimes I didn't. I stopped checking. Eventually, the posts became less frequent. Then my father stopped calling. My sister stopped sending updates about my mother. Not because anything dramatic happened. Life just moved. That's the annoying thing about life. It keeps moving even when you are waiting for some giant final scene. There wasn't one. No courtroom. No confession. No public apology. No moment where my mother showed up at my door and admitted everything. Nothing cinematic. Honestly rude. I wanted at least one satisfying monologue. Instead, I got a Tuesday. A completely ordinary Tuesday. I was standing in my kitchen making coffee when my daughter texted me a picture. Her first apartment with a little plant on the windowsill. She'd named the plant. Of course she had. I laughed. Then I noticed something in the corner of the picture. A framed photograph. It was from her 21st birthday. The ugly little back room. The cheap cake. Her friends crowded around the table. Me standing behind her with my hands on her shoulders. She had framed it. Not the big party. Not the pastel disaster. Not anything my mother had posted. That picture. The one from the room nobody wanted. I stared at it for a long time. Then my phone buzzed again. Another message. My daughter had sent one more picture. It was a tiny cake sitting on her kitchen counter. One candle. Nothing fancy. And taped to the front was a handwritten note. For Mom. I laughed so hard I nearly spilled my coffee. Because apparently after everything, after all the screaming and gossip, and fake accounts and credit cards and family, politics and years of being told I was difficult, the thing that survived was a cheap little cake and a photograph. Nobody else thought mattered. I didn't post it. I didn't send it to my family. I didn't need anyone to see it. I just saved the picture. Then I put my phone down. My coffee was cold. The laundry was still sitting in the dryer. There were bills on the counter. My sink was full. My life was completely ordinary. And honestly, perfect.